My boyfriend, who I live with, works as a teacher in town about 15 minutes away by train. He gets home more or less around the same time every day, give or take an hour or so. I, on the other hand, work from home. In late January of this year, we had gotten into a pretty big fight about something stupid. I can't even remember what it was about now, but it was one of those fights where you don't speak to each other, text, call, or anything until the next day. So this afternoon I was laying in bed getting work done. It was a Tuesday and I was pretty sure his last class finished at 1 p.m. on Tuesdays, meaning he'd surely be home by 2:30. But around 1 p.m. I heard the front door open and shut. I thought, I guess he got home an hour early today. It was normal for him to skip the last class every once in a while, so I didn't really think anything of it. In fact, I was mostly mentally prepared for the awkward post-fight, "Hey, how's it going?" conversation. So I continued to lay in bed and do my work and wait for him to come in and change his clothes. The bedroom door was closed and I had earplugs sort of half in, as I usually do when I'm working, but I could hear the heavy footsteps of him walking around the apartment as he always does. If we hadn't been mid-fight and I wasn't so preoccupied with the awkwardness of it all, I might have noticed how slow the footsteps were, or how long he spent walking around the living room. But I was caught up in the dramatic of the fight and wasn't thinking about it. I was just laying there, waiting for him to finally come in. Finally, the bedroom door slowly opened a few inches. I turned my head towards the door and prepared to give him sort of an awkward, "We've been fighting for 24 hours, huh?" smile. But the door didn't open more than a few inches. I looked and saw that a woman's hand with red nail polish on the doorknob. Whoever was there slowly closed the door just as they had opened it, without entering the room. I jumped out of bed, ripped out my earplugs, and sort of froze there for a few seconds while thinking rapidly. My first thought, that was not my boyfriend. Then I thought, could it have been his mom, his sister, the landlady? For some reason I concluded that surely it was his mom or sister, so I opened the bedroom door and walked into the living room. There wasn't anyone there, but the room smelled heavily of women's perfume. Then I came to my senses and realized his mom and sister don't have any keys and never come over before. The landlady has never entered without permission. This was a stranger. I ran back into the bedroom and shut the door, now shaking heavily. There's a balcony connected to the bedroom, so despite the cold January rain, I stood on the balcony and called my boyfriend. He picked up and I asked him if his mom or sister might have come over unannounced. He told me, "No, don't move, I'm calling the police." The police were there in minutes and searched the whole apartment. Of course, nobody was there by this point. It was weird though. Nothing was missing from the apartment despite us keeping a jar full of money right by the entrance. Nothing was even touched. In fact, it seemed like the intruder came straight to the bedroom, saw my legs on the bed, panicked, and left. Plus, you can't open the big wooden door without a key. For a few days, my boyfriend and I were convinced that it was just the landlady being nosy. I began to feel better. Nevertheless, we demanded that the landlady change our locks. She came to change them with her husband. She made a discovery. There was a square area by the keyhole that had been scratched away with something. The landlady said surely someone used a tool to break into the apartment. Then a day or two later, my boyfriend told me something. I have something to tell you, but don't freak out. He told me that the orange kitchen scissors were missing. I obviously freaked out. I tore the apartment apart looking for those scissors. It's been 6 months and those scissors are still gone. So the whole thing is just creepy and weird. A stranger breaks into a nice apartment but doesn't touch or take anything valuable, not even the money sitting by the entrance. Takes the scissors from the kitchen, goes straight to the bedroom, sees someone in bed and immediately leaves. I never got to meet the person who opened the door that day. I hope I never do. I decided to stay in my college city between my junior and senior year to intern and wait tables to help save money. I would intern Monday to Friday from 7 to 2 and then wait tables from 4 to 10. My internship was only a mile away from my apartment, so I would walk there and then I would get a ride with a coworker to my waiting job. But I will never forget the day that I was followed. It started out like any other day. I woke up early and walked to my internship, which only took about 20 minutes. The day seemed to be dragging, and when it hit 2, I was excited to head home and eat lunch. I thought I would have just enough time for a quick nap before heading to the country club. I grabbed my things and headed outside. The traffic was pretty steady and I was waiting to cross the one-way street when I saw a dark green car with peeling paint and dirty windows. Finally, a break in the cars opened up and I jogged across the street. I walked 1 block and saw the dark green car coming my way, which was weird because this was another one-way street going in the opposite direction, which meant this car had pulled a U-turn essentially. I knew I had seen this car just a minute ago. That's when that guy pulled off to the side of the road right in front of me and got out of his car while I was crossing the street. He walked a wide semicircle, so now I was between him and his car and began bombarding me with questions. How was your day? It's pretty warm outside, isn't it? Did you braid your hair yourself? Where are you going? The hair started standing up on the back of my neck and my heart was racing. Something just felt off. I was a small woman, and I'm pretty used to having men ask me questions and harass me while I walked the street, but this was different. He was closing in on me and wasn't giving me any time to process his questions or allowing for any break between them. He had his hand out to shake, and I still don't know why to this day I went to shake his hand. I didn't consciously shake his hand, but it wasn't until my small hand was in his large hand that I realized what was happening. "I like your shirt. It's really pretty on you. It looks good." Thanks. Where are you heading?" At this point, he had let go of my hand, but he had continuously walked towards me, and I was walking backwards in the middle of the street. I was always positioned between him and his car. My heart was pounding out of my chest, and I knew that I had to get out of there. I said, "I'm sorry, I have to go," and managed to get fully across the street and onto the sidewalk. I was still looking at him, though, and walking backwards. "You're a waitress, right? At the country club up the road?" I panicked. I wasn't in uniform for the country club. I was 100% positive that he wasn't a member there. I thought maybe he knew me from my old job working at a sports bar, but I'm pretty good with faces and would have remembered him. He was about 6'4" with dark hair and had thick rimmed glasses. I would have remembered his face. There couldn't have been any way that he knew I worked as a waitress at the country club, and I doubt that my old boss would have mentioned it to him if he did know me from my old gig. "I'm sorry, I really have to go." I turned around and began fast-paced walking/jogging as fast as I could. I usually took the scenic route home through the old neighborhoods in the city, but decided to change it up and took the busiest streets I could think of near me. I turned around when I was about half a block down and saw that he was getting into his car. I called my boyfriend at the time to try and calm down, but he was in a work meeting and couldn't answer. I texted him about the guy and I was terrified. I turned right to head to the street that had a playground and a popular restaurant, knowing I would pass tons of families and people out for lunch. I couldn't relax, though. I finally reached the busy street and had to wait for a break in traffic to cross the street again. Luckily, I was right, and there were people everywhere. Tons of cars driving by, families at the playground, and people enjoying the weather. I started to relax and look around, trying to convince myself that he must have met me at the sports bar. That's when I saw the dark green car a block away, driving at a snail's pace. He was staring right at me and had a disgusting smile on his face. We locked eyes for a moment and he sped off. By this point, I was only a couple of blocks away from my apartment, and I ran. When I finally got to my apartment, I had a panic attack and started crying. My sister's boyfriend was home, and I told him what happened. My hands were shaking and I couldn't breathe. I was paranoid that the guy had followed me home, and then I thought he knew that I was waitressing at the country club. What if he already knew where I lived? I couldn't calm down, and I couldn't sleep soundly for a few weeks after. I didn't see him again for a while in the city, and I hope to never meet him again. The only regret I have is not reporting it to a non-emergency police. But I figured telling them that I was creeped out wasn't a good enough reason to alert them. I wish I had.